Hello folks, welcome to my YouTube channel, Watercolor Impressions. Learning to paint interior scenes in watercolors can be quite daunting for beginners. This week I'll show you how to approach and paint in watercolors of a Toronto subway station. Before you go, hit the subscribe button so you guys can get weekly video updates from our channel. And let's get started, guys. Even though I've been painting for a few years, I started focusing on more of my drawing nowadays because it is easier to know where everything goes. Even though sometimes I try to change my composition where everything sits, and it is necessary to have a good drawing to get a good painting. So I'll start with the back part on the top right because I try to always paint from top to bottom, and I'm also painting in an angle of 35 degrees. So whatever I put at the top, it eventually comes down. So I take the wash and bring it all the way to the bottom. So there is a lot of blending happens. So the one thing I want to make sure when you're painting an interior scene is not to make the scene muddy. So what I mean by that is, if you mix two colors, it will be fine. If you mix more than 3 or 4 colors, the colors tend to get muddy. So in watercolors, it can be quite challenging because if you have to get the exact value, you have to layer the colors in such a way to match exactly to the reference. So that's why if you see a lot of watercolorists when they paint, they try to paint a lighter scene than the darker scene. If you want to paint a darker scene, they usually paint smaller, because that way it's easy to control the watercolors and till able to get that fluidity in our medium. And you can see I'm trying to put the colors based on my reference. And as any individual, every person sees colors different, so people put colors based on how it's impressed them than what they're seeing. So the way I see colors is different from the way a person would see it. And one thing I want to make sure that don't be discouraged if your colors exactly match to the reference. It is fine, and you can put the colors as long as your values match to your reference, because that creates depth and distance in our painting. Any painting you paint, that's all we should care about, the values as well as the depth and distance, and that will create a beautiful painting as well, and especially color as well. As I talked about before, not making it muddy, so try to mix colors in 1 or 2 colors instead of putting a lot of colors. And even though I approach the scene, as I layer it again and again, there are certain things on my painting got muddy. So, but I persevered, and I know what's my focal point. I kept painting it to get a good painting out of it. And now I'm focusing on the colors on the streetcar, and you can see, and there's a lot of grayish things, a lot of gray colors in the shadow side. So now I'm blocking in the figures, and to know that where everything goes. And I'm using Cadmium Yellow and Yellow Ochre, and you can also use Cad Yellow and Orange as well. So now I finished my first wash, and you can see we did a pretty good first wash. And now I'm going to be focusing on the second wash or the final wash. And I started with a darker wash in the distance, and even though it looks a little bit darker now, this wash will go a little bit pale. So if I take a value scale and check the darker value, which I put it on the top of my painting, it looks on the value of 7 or 6 or even 8. But after 5 minutes, once it dries out, watercolors tend to go on the value down. So it will go to the value of 5 or 4. So we have to be careful in layering in such a way that we can go back and adjust the value. In watercolors, you can only go darker. Once you go darker, it's really hard to bring down your value, because that's how watercolor works. And you can paint lighter values, and it's not like any other medium. You can go and fix your value. So that's why a lot of people get discouraged when they're using watercolors, because it doesn't work how they want it. And the one thing I really like about watercolor is it does what it does. So don't force the medium and try to do what it is. So in the interior scene, you could see the one challenging part for beginners is arranging the values. So when you start from the beginning, you can see I started from the light wash. Now I'm doing the second wash, the little bit of a darker wash, and this wash you can call it as a mid-tones. So any painting you do, there's three things happens. There's a light tone, there's a mid-tone, and there is the darkest dark. There's a shadow tone. So the lightest tone will be on the value of 0, and where the mid-tone will be on the value of 2 to 5, and the darker tone will be on the value of 8 to 10. And you can see the values which I'm putting at the end of the car, it might be on the value of 6 or 7. And in watercolors it tends to go a little bit drier, and you can see it dried quite a bit. When I mentioned at the top of the streetcar, even though we put a value of 7 or 6, it became to a value of 3 or 4. And this is a layering I was talking about. You can see the red which I put in, it's kind of a little bit muddy, but still I can work with it. And now I'm trying to paint the the floor of the people who are standing. Sorry. And the other thing, one of the mistake when I started painting is painting everything darker. So whenever as a beginner paints, they try to see the values which are darker. They try to make it darker and darker, and the painting look really muddy and the values doesn't match. So the next time when you paint, try to see how the value is. The easiest way to see the values of your reference is by squinting your eyes. If you squint your eyes, even let's look at my reference, and if you squint your eyes, you could see there is the darkest values at the end of the streetcar at the top where it frames it, and at the bottom as well as at the end of it, and there's a little bit of light coming through from the streetcar on the side of the walls. And we finished the mid-tone of the streetcar, so now I'm doing the darker tone on top of the streetcar, and you can see as soon as we added the darker tone, the forms started happening. And I also added a little bit of white paint on the streetcar and where it curves. As soon as we added that, you could see the form of the streetcar takes place. I would have left it as it is, and it looked pretty good as a value, but when I squint my eyes, when I see my painting and the reference, the values doesn't match on the top of the streetcar at the end as well as at the bottom of it. And I went ahead and fixed a little bit, and as you can see in the end results. And now I'm adding the tertiary details. The other way to simplify a complex scene is to bring it into its basic shapes. So what I mean by that, we have to look for the primary shapes, that's the bigger shapes, and the medium shapes, that's the secondary shapes, and the tertiary shapes, those are the details which are a little bit tinier in our scene. For example, if you take a reference, and the bigger shape would be the streetcar, and the secondary shapes would be the floor as well as the top of the roof, and the tertiary details would be the people and the signs. So now it's your turn. Take one of your interior scene and try to apply the principles what I've shown you in the tutorial, and let's see what you can come up with. Thanks again for watching this interior painting tutorial. Please feel free to share your thoughts on the video in the comment section below. If you have any other topics related to watercolors that you would like me to cover, please reach out to me at watercolorimpressions@gmail.com or leave a comment down below. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for weekly uploads, and share with your fellow artists, friends and family. And good luck with your painting, folks.